This is Media Sales Mastery, the podcast for media sales professionals. In each episode, we bring you information, insights, ideas, and interviews from some of the industry's top thought leaders. Head to mediasalesmastery.com to help pick the topic and guide the show.
This is Media Sales Mastery, the podcast for media sales professionals. In each episode, we aim to bring you information, insights, and interviews from some of the industry's top thought leaders. I'm your host, Jamie Wood, and our guest today is Steve Smith. Now, Steve is the co-founder of Entertainment Strategy Group. Interesting story with Steve's career. He spent a bit of time in the music industry. He was the general manager of ARN Melbourne before he got a really interesting tap on the shoulder to go over to the Middle East and head up one of the largest radio broadcasters in the region, the MENA region, Arabian Radio Network. Now, Steve was the chief operating officer over there, and it's safe to say that when we talk about today's topic of fast-tracking your product knowledge, he would have to be one of the foremost experts on this. As media salespeople, the product mix that we sell, the customer base we sell into is becoming increasingly diverse and complex. Steve's somebody who spent a lot of time working in different regions around the world, consulting to different media businesses, working across different languages, formats, markets, and launching innovative new products to market. So he is the perfect person to speak to today. What we're going to cover off is how do you upskill your knowledge on products so that you can take the various sales tools in your arsenal out to market with clarity and confidence. Steve, welcome to the show.
Good to be here, Jamie.
I couldn't think of anyone better to get on the podcast. You know, you're somebody that has worked in around the world in media, in consulting, and also leading a big media organization in the Middle East. And what was really apparent to me when I was thinking about people to talk about fast-tracking your product knowledge is you're a guy that's worked across different formats, different languages, selling into different populations in different countries. You are probably the guy that knows how to make sense of a really complex market and a really complex group of different assets. And I think as salespeople, and based on your view, would it be fair to say that the market is becoming more complex in terms of what media salespeople are expected to know and to sell?
Absolutely. Now you're across so many multiple platforms. The salesperson of today compared to yesterday needs to be a whole lot more equipped, but also a whole lot more organised than what it probably was previously.
We're going to jump into it today, and I've got a bunch of questions for you. But so the audience has a bit of context around your background, we're going to jump into a segment called The First Five.
The First Five.
Steve, the first thing I want to ask you, Entertainment Strategy Group, what do you guys do?
Well, as it says, in entertainment, there's a changing world in entertainment in general, whether that's broadcast or whether that's from commercial agencies to music. It has gone through such an evolution that has moved so fast of late that the landscape has changed significantly. So what we do as a consultancy is, with a heritage and a background of over 25 years in media and entertainment, we're able to come in and be able to, with our experience, be able to help major scaled media and entertainment groups move at a quicker pace to actually transition to digital first and foremost, but also help them make those cultural changes that need to happen to make sure that they are up to speed with what their consumer is asking for out there, but in particular making sure that internally and culturally they have the right mix in their businesses to make sure that they continue to evolve, because it is going to continue to change, especially with 5G coming, etc. That they're probably, the term we use a lot with them is get them up on their toes and ready for whatever's coming over the hill.
And I think your previous role in the Middle East would have probably required you to really lead that digital transformation of a business. And I want to ask you, Steve, day one in Dubai, tell me about that.
Well, day one was certainly a cultural shock. It was August 1st, 2008, and if you know that part of the world, that's right in the midst of summer. So I think it was around about 49 degrees when I first walked across from my hotel to the studios in Media City, and that was a mistake number one. Next day, I actually caught an Uber across. That it was just such an intensity of humidity and heat. But once I got into the office and And something that we were really looking forward to as a family was the cultural diversity was intense. There's 200 different nationalities living in the UAE. There's about 9 million people living in the UAE, and 95% of that is made up of people from all over the world. So day one, I was really taken by the colours and movement of such a diverse cultural mix, and thankfully that passion for that challenge really held me in good stead, because it really is an environment there that you need to be passionate about living and working in a culturally diverse market.
And you're somebody I know who's done some time in the music industry. You've done some time in general management, running media companies here, and now with ESG, doing a lot of consulting on a global scale. I want to know, what's your favourite thing about the media industry? What has kept you in the industry as long as you have?
I've been asked this question many times, and I think what I keep coming back to is that there's no finish line. Every day you're learning something new, and that for someone with my management style and energy in what I put into the business, that's really important. So being able to continually be learning after 20 odd years in the business, but also knowing that, you're never going to get it 100% right 100% of the time. There's always going to be new challenges, and that particularly in an environment like Dubai, it is, I don't mind saying, it is probably one of the most innovative markets in the world. But as from a leadership point of view, it was incredibly wonderful to be able to be in an environment like that, where you're constantly being challenged to continue to evolve but innovate at such a rate. That probably for me and for this industry is why I continue to consult across all different types of entertainment, is because it simply is never going to be a finish line. There's always going to be something new.
And I think that's a really good segue into my final question for you, because it's really apparent to me that you've had a really good cross-section of media salespeople that have either been working as part of your sales forces, or that are engaging your consulting services, or that have been just somewhat in your professional network. And given this podcast is really targeted towards people in those critical first 5 years of their journey in media sales, I want to know your view, Steve. What skills does someone need to master in order to be a media sales professional?
Look, there is a number. I think that initial passion for the broader industry of content creation is important. Just because you are in the sales unit doesn't mean that you can't go and mix it with the programmers and give your opinion on, hey, what you think is going to really engage the audience. So I think first and foremost, have that real passion and interest in content creation is going to be really important. One of the areas we really focus on in large-scale media and entertainment groups, both here in Australia, particularly up in Southeast Asia and in the MENA region, is that if you're going to be successful commercially and from a personal point of view as a salesperson, you need to get organised. And what I mean by that is that you really need to make sure that you understand what you need to achieve across your ideal week. And we use that term a lot, ideal week. Basically looking at your calendar and making sure that you're achieving all the levels of professionalism that you need across your week to make sure that you're doing the right amount of sales calls, making sure that you're following up on those opportunities that you've uncovered, but also managing your outside life as well, staying fit, keeping up with friends, catching up with family. This all takes an element of being organised. And I think that's crucial to anybody coming into this business, is that don't get caught up in the glitz and glam so much and lose focus on what's really important, is that you manage yourself efficiently across your week. You're going to get great results if you do exactly that.
That's a really, really good note for people listening. And I know that probably the 4 or 5 people that I've had on this podcast have all made a point of saying self-care, work-life integration, work-life kind of bleed into each other these days. And what you need to be very protective of is your physical well-being, your health, making sure you take time out to reset, to replenish, and understanding that this is a tough gig. We've got people coming into this industry that are probably getting a little bit shocked by the pace, the intensity, the pressure, the demands to be creative, the demands to negotiate. It is a tough slog. And I think if self-care isn't at the forefront of your mind, I would completely agree that everything else is somewhat irrelevant. So, Steve, we're going to jump into the main topic around fast-tracking your product knowledge.
Media sales mastery.
As media salespeople, why is it so critical to have a comprehensive knowledge of the products you're selling?
Particularly from a sales commercial point of view, you will be sitting in front of clients that the investment they're about to make in your advice could make them or break them. And that's you really have to understand that from a sales point of view. And most media sales people will commence their careers from a direct sales point of view. So you're sitting in front of the founder, the director of a business that has got to a point where they can look at mainstream media as an advertising tool. Well, that would mean that you really need to understand the product of your client exceptionally well. And that takes research and that takes time. Not having that leniency towards that, you'll find that you'll start just rolling out the same solutions over and over again, and then those clients won't hit the objectives that they set out with this investment. And guess what? They'll stop advertising on that particular platform or with your particular brand. So taking that time to actually understand what the objectives are of the client, but understanding their product and where they've come from. Why did this business start? And what was the initial objective of the founders in putting this business together? I think they're really key points in a discovery process that someone can, if they can get this in their repertoire when they're doing their discovery process, this will help them tenfold.
I was going to just ask just in terms of that, when you say, their repertoire, you're talking specifically about being able to go out and really not even talk about product initially, is it? It's about uncovering a business need and about understanding the commercial reality of these people making an investment with your channels. They need to get a return and a result, don't they? And if you're going and selling a product versus uncovering a solution and providing a consultative solution, you're really missing the point, aren't you?
Absolutely. And you see it when you're out there training new sales guys, that those that actually listen 70% more than they actually talk, they're the guys, and take notes, they're the guys that I always make a note, they will be successful because they take the time to understand what are the objectives of this client and what does this investment really mean to them, and what is it that they want to achieve? So many salespeople don't ask that question, come out of the meeting not understanding what's really on the line here, and 9 times out of 10 that campaign will not work simply because the salesperson hasn't taken the time to understand the objectives.
And in your experience, and I'm going to shout out to a former colleague of yours, Josh Batiste. I was in Dubai back in 2016 and reached out to him on LinkedIn, and he was kind enough to give me an hour of his time, shout me a coffee, and let me go up there to the offices of Arabian Radio Network. And my head spun when he told me the different stations, digital products, formats, languages, clients that you guys were engaging with over there. And I'm curious, in your previous role at Arabian Radio Network, how did you guys enable such a large sales force to quickly increase their product knowledge across such a broad and complex asset base?
Look, I think the key component to it, and Josh comes from a really good leadership style in that he's passionate himself about the business, and that really filters all the way across the sales floor. Because we were broadcasting in so many different languages, several different languages, each of these brands were dedicated, some to Hindi, some to Farsi, some to Arabic. We had an array of English stations as well. It really you really had to make sure that the sales unit were passionate about the content, not just about making this month's budget or this quarter's budget or hitting the mark for the year. It was how well is our product being perceived in the market and how well are we producing great content was really important for the sales guys to actually understand those pressures as well. And one of the things that we really drove was that the sales unit and the programming unit were entwined. That they, although the programming director had the last say on whatever went to air, they understood the pressures of what the sales unit were under. And then flip it the other way, the sales unit understood the pressures that the programming team were under as well. So there was a lovely respect and cohesiveness between both sales and programming. When you walk into a new radio network, you can almost smell whether that key component is in place in the business. And it's an area that I always look at when I walk into a broadcast business in particular, because that's predominantly my background. You're able to get quite a feel early as to where maybe some of the problems lie, and that's that lack of respect between the two crucial components of a successful media unit, that being revenue generation, sales, and also content creation, programming. You'll get a feel if there is that mutual respect, and that mainly gives you a good feel towards why they have been successful in the past and where you can help them to grow.
And I'm going to jump forward to where you are now with Entertainment Strategy Group, because I would imagine that a large part of the reason your services are engaged are when you have traditional media companies looking to pivot and looking to innovate and future-proof their business. And what that presents is opportunity, but also challenges at a media sales level, Steve, because when we're launching a new product to market that might be untested, that we might need to educate the market about, that we maybe don't have a good litmus test on pricing, maybe we don't have a lot of confidence in our fulfillment. I want to know from your experience, and what would you suggest is best practice when launching a new media product to market? As a media salesperson, what things can they do to maximize their success when they're doing that?
There's a whole an array of cells that need to be entwined to enable a successful launch of a media unit. One of the key components that we always found, and we launched many new platforms over there, was that you really had to put the content quality and the talent, particularly, at the forefront. If you had great talent, and I'm talking humans here, in front of microphones or in front of cameras, that really gave you a significant head start. If you didn't, and you were trying to deliver a level of content, but the talent wasn't quite trained or wasn't quite at the level that it should be, you were always going to struggle. So one of the areas we really focused on when we all first got into Dubai was let's assess where are we at from a global point of view as far as the quality and professionalism of our talent. And you know what? We were able to get a fairly clear insight into where are the areas that we really need to focus on, and what do we need to recruit, and what kind of help do they need to be able to help the programmers coach the best out of these people. And I think that was a really important component in any new medium or media that is developing at the moment, is that make sure that you're really investing in those content creators, and make sure that that becomes part of your culture ongoing, is that you're always looking out for new talent, or someone at that party that you just heard tell a great story. Make a note of that person, because that could be someone that could make great breakfast radio talent, for instance.
I think what I'm hearing from you, which is really interesting, is in any business, any media business that has a content production arm. So we're talking about journalists, we're talking about editorial staff, we're certainly talking about radio talent, or this new world of these social video content creators. It's so critical to actually collaborate with those people and to have a good understanding of the content, why it resonates with the audience, why they program the content or create the content the way they do, why they package and deliver it, and how it works with the audience. I guess where we naturally start to have a bit of a challenge in media sales is to go, I've always been of the view that if you're selling a medium, you have to have expertise in the medium you're selling first and foremost. So you need to be that thought leader in the channel that you work in. If you work in television, the expectation is that you've mastered a really comprehensive knowledge of the TV landscape, of the competitive set, of the industry bodies, of all the different elements of that channel. But I think increasingly we're expecting media salespeople to be experts across digital, across other channels in the media landscape as well. And I think you're even seeing a lot of publishers now, Steve, go from linear broadcast to have a brand and a content capability at the core of what they do, but to distribute and package that content across a whole bunch of different platforms. And so I guess I wanted to hear your view, mate, on what would you suggest for people out there that are really grappling with, well, what do I need to do? Do I need to be the expert in my medium, or do I need to have a broad knowledge of all media channels? How would you suggest that media salespeople balance those two somewhat divergent priorities?
I think absorbing as much content as you possibly can across multiple platforms is going to be really important. But not just listening ambient, you need to listen to it and proactively try and understand why are they putting the content out at that particular level. It's really important to understand what is the content creating mechanisms behind the end result. And that's incredibly important in anything that when you're watching TV or when you're listening to radio or when you're seeing a video on YouTube that has been produced a certain way. Try and look deeper into, well, what was it that they were trying to achieve to get a connection with the consumer, with the listener, and with the general public? What was the actual key messages they were trying to get? You start doing that with every time, if you want to be a media professional, you start doing that with every time, even in your off time when you're listening or viewing content, you'll start to get a really good grasp on what's the reasoning behind it. And once you have that and you get that honed by talking to great producers, great programming heads, once you have that, you're able to talk that in front of a client. Well, that really gives you a significant advantage over the competing salesperson that's going to come in next. You actually understand the magic of content creation. That's a really distinct advantage you're going to have if you're able to portray that.
And I want to hang on that point, Steve, because I think that can't be understated, the importance of differentiating what you do as a media sales professional from your competitive set. As the market becomes tighter, as it becomes more commoditized, as it becomes more price and value led, what is going to separate a media salesperson from a media sales master, in many cases, is somebody who has the ability to actually sit in front of a client with a really good understanding of human behavior, of audience insight, of why they choose to engage with the channels that they engage with, and why being the critical term there. Really being able to position a media solution around those fundamental elements of engaging an audience and influencing human behavior. Inventory is the tool you use to do that. And I think this is what's important when we start talking about, this idea of having an increasingly complex asset base and more products to sell, is the way of simplifying it, I think, is very much bringing it back to that core element of, well, what's the end user experience and how do we simply articulate that in market to a client so they can understand the power of it? Would you say that that's really, is there anything to expand on that point from your perspective, Steve? That to me is just coming to me on the fly.
Yeah, look, I also think being able to talk the market. In business, you're awake at 3 a.m. in the morning when you're starting a new business, worrying about, how are we going to get to that next point of being able to hire more people, being able to pay staff, being able to grow this business and live the dream with behind the reasons for founding a business. Well, you need to, as a sales professional in the media, you need to be able to talk the market and understand that, the US trade talks with China are having an effect on the Australian dollar. What does that mean for you, Business X, when you're exporting into Southeast Asia? I made that up on the fly, but being able to talk business is really important. And I'm astounded at the amount of times that I sit with salespeople in the market and they don't understand or don't even have a basic understanding of what is affecting business right at this very moment. And it's very easy these days particularly to be able to get a snapshot each morning on what's happening in global business from a commodities point of view, from oil, etc. Just being able to understand what's affecting trade at this very point may give you an edge on your competitor who's coming in after you, because you can actually sit in front of CEO of Business X and be able to talk what's affecting their business, but be able to talk it from a global machinations point of view. That's incredibly powerful.
It really is, and I think you're absolutely right. The ability to have solid commercial acumen and be able to go and relay those kind of insights in market with your customer base are so vital. And I completely agree. I mean, we have scenarios where you've got salespeople that are looking to get an increase on their yield. They're looking to increase rates. They might be in a position where they're putting a new proposition to market. But unless they have that broader economic context to validate the reasons why they might be wanting to command a premium, or to validate the reasons why an opportunity is time sensitive, it really falls down into the trap of being something of a one-dimensional sell. So Steve, I think that's a really, really good insight. I want to jump into the next topic, mate, because I think this is going to really speak to your particular skill set.
I can't ask my sales manager that.
The question I got, which I'm so happy to hear that this came from somebody in South Africa. Now, they want to remain anonymous, but I just love the fact that early on this podcast has already got a listening audience over there. The question, Steve, I'm going to throw to you, and then we'll go through it in real time and maybe troubleshoot some ways to help this person. But the question is, as a salesperson, it's my job to know my clients and what their objectives and issues are. For this reason, I feel ethically responsible to only recommend products that I know will deliver them an outcome. I'm struggling with an incongruence between my own values and my sales director's expectation that I continue to grow revenue from my client base by selling our new digital and social products. I feel like our new products are strong, but not relevant to everyone in my client list. Being asked to take them to all existing advertisers feels like it could undermine my integrity as a salesperson. I feel as though I am doomed to either frustrate my clients or disappoint my sales director. Any help would be greatly appreciated. I mean, just what's your initial reaction to that if you were to hear that cold?
Humans are humans, and they will lean towards, and so are salespeople, they will lean towards what they find the most comfortable. So, and we're seeing it a lot with multi-platform selling, is from traditional media now being asked to sell across on social and across on online and across on multiple platforms, that they will lean towards what they're comfortable with. So my suggestion to that would be is get uncomfortable and get a much more in-depth understanding of how the consumer is actually absorbing other forms of the media that you're selling. So if you're not comfortable with the social assets or the online assets that your sales director is pushing you to sell, well, I would take the time and I'd bring your sales manager in the loop on this as well, that can I buy some time to be able to really understand how it's impacting the end user, the listener, the viewer, the consumer out there. I think that's really important to get that understanding of why we are getting such impact from a social point of view for a particular target market. Well, you need to see that firsthand and understand it. I think the biggest issue with salespeople who say that I don't hand on heart believe it's going to get the objective is I think they are flying blind and not necessarily understanding how the end consumer is actually absorbing that media. Once they have that, there should be no reason that they can't hand on heart put this in front of a client as a media mix and be able to hit the objectives of that client with that particular campaign. But I think a little bit of lack of knowledge does enable people to actually say, well, I'm not comfortable with that. Well, find out, get yourself up to speed and understand how the consumer is absorbing that media, and I think you'll find you'll feel a lot more comfortable with it.
I think that's a really, really good insight there, Steve, and it's not immediately apparent when looking at this question that maybe there is a lack of confidence, but I do think that probably there is that at play very much here, which is it's a new proposition. Maybe it's untested or unproven. I'm not going to go and take it out to my client when I'm not 100% confident. And I think the feedback would be to get yourself comfortable with it and to learn it and to lean into it. The other thing I would maybe add to your point and to expand on here, Steve, because I thought about this one for a bit. I mean, at the end of the day, as a media business, as a sales director, I do need to set the expectation with my team that they take new products to market. Now, I've got to furnish them with tools and support to do that, and I've got to make sure that at a fulfillment level, we can deliver on what we are selling. But it's really up to the salesperson to craft a valid business reason as to why these products are relevant to this advertiser. And I kind of wonder if there's any thoughts you had on how this salesperson could maybe position a new product opportunity to one of their advertisers that's already spending with them in a way that will still entice them and make them interested in seeing what the proposition is. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think your South African salesperson that sent you a note, I think being able to look broader internationally for examples of success across all different mediums is a good place to start. Don't be so caught up in just looking inside your market to be able to find examples of where using new forms of media have worked. I would take a much broader view, lift your head, lift your eyes and look broader internationally and find examples, whether that's there's some great work that's happening up in Singapore or as we know over in the Middle East. South Africa is another great radio market as well, but there's some real action that's happening out of Africa as well where they're doing things way ahead some of the more established markets that you might actually find some examples that you can put into practice in your local market. But my view would be look a whole lot broader for examples and guidance rather than just more narrowly in your local market.
I think that's a really good point. And to me, if I was to put something together on the fly around calling a client to take this new proposition, it might be something as simple as to say, we want to bring you a first-to-market opportunity. It's a new initiative we're working on that we really believe in. You're a trusted partner of ours, and we'd love to get your thoughts and feedback on this new proposition we're bringing to market. So straight away, there's a level of exclusivity. There's a level of managing expectations that it's a new proposition. But the next piece would be to actually say, this is actually an opportunity to really reinforce the relationship with the client. Now, we're not throwing stuff at you that we don't believe will add real meaningful value to your business. So we're not going to be doing that. We're going to be, in a technical sense, cross-selling or upselling a client. But in terms of how we package and present that to the client, we're bringing them a first-to-market opportunity or a new proposition. And to your point, Steve, this is really going to be something they want to get on early because we're seeing around the world that there's a really, really nice adoption or a really quick uptake of this new technology. Here's some examples of best practice from some other markets. So I completely agree with your point, mate, around sometimes it is just around having that next level of understanding around the broader global context we're operating in. And, there's one thing I know after my 10 years of selling media, it's a case study is your most powerful tool in these type of scenarios to show that something's been done again, but to show it's a new proposition as well. So, mate, I feel like that's probably a good starting point for this person in terms of their unique challenge. Was there any other parting thoughts you might have for them before we wrap this up?
Look, to get back to very basics, someone with a challenge of taking something to market where they're not actually 100% understanding or 100% behind the product, I would think that they need to take some more of their own time to listen into the product, to put the microscope personally and get to understand the product, and just put more of your own time into that is going to help them when they go out to the market and be able to push it. Everybody gets nervous about taking something new. I think if they could flip it on their head, like you just said, and this is something new, but it's something really exciting, and I've got an example out of Singapore, for instance, does put you, again, in a different level of professionalism than the next guy that's going to walk in the door.
Mate, that is a really nice summation, and I think we're going to wrap this up, Steve, but I would love to get you back on this podcast because I feel like we could spend a few more episodes probably unpacking this one. What I'd love is if there was any sort of wrap up or any sort of final parting thought you had for the audience out there, and it's really just a case of going, what are the one or two takeaways for people who really want to fast track their product knowledge so they can get to market and have greater impact sooner? What would that be?
You mentioned in the intro, that first 1 to 3, 1 to 5 years is so crucial in setting up your long-term career in media and entertainment. And mind you, your career may not necessarily just stay in a commercial sales capacity. It may lead on to broader management. It may even lead towards programming. So I would always ask everybody, whether you're coming into sales or whether you're coming into programming, marketing, or whatever it is in media and entertainment, is to always have your radar on as to how things are working within the business. Don't be just caught in your department, the sales department or programming or whatever it is. Be aware of what really makes this business tick. And when I say have your radar, see opportunities where you can actually question about how did you make that work when you're talking to a programming director or to an emerging talent that you can see is absolutely has an abundance of natural ability. Go and understand how that person puts together great content. Those kind of things are going to help you. So come outside of your bubble and make sure that you're constantly looking to learn in those initial few years will hold you in great stead going forward.
That is really, really sage advice, Steve, and I would wholeheartedly agree with everything you just said there. We're going to wrap this up, and I just want to say, guys listening, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and make sure you head to MediaSalesMastery.com to email us with any questions. Now, I'm really eager to hear from people because I want you guys to pick the topics and to guide the shows moving forward. And I want to thank you sincerely, Steve. You're a busy man. I know that you spend a big part of your life traveling both domestically and internationally. I want to thank you for making the time today. You've always been very generous with your time, and I wanted to know if anyone in the listening audience wants to reach out to you or Entertainment Strategy Group, how would you suggest they do that?
Probably best to go to our website. That's entertainmentstrategygroup.com. It's really quite easy just to get our contact details there. But even back through yourself, Jamie, you've got all our details. It'll be wonderful to hear from anybody that just wants to have a chat. My business partners are just as passionate about media and entertainment as I am, and I'm sure they'll take calls if I'm not available.
Well, Steve Smith, I thank you so much for your time today, sir, and I look forward to getting you back on the podcast sooner rather than later.
Good on you, Jamie. Thank you.
You've been listening to Media Sales Mastery, the podcast for media sales professionals. Head to MediaSalesMastery.com to help pick the topic, guide the show, and don't forget to subscribe to receive new episodes each week.